dark web is a horrible place, a pit where the worst parts of human nature thrive. And that's where I work. I'm what people call a white hat hacker. That means I'm one of the good guys. I get paid to take down sick websites, trace digital trails that lead to monsters hiding in the shadows, and shine a bit of light into the darkest corners of the internet. Most days I sit in my small, messy apartment with only the glow from my monitors lighting the room. My fingers move fast across the keyboard, digging through layers of hidden, disgusting content and revealing secrets most people would never dare to look at. It's my job, and it's definitely not for everyone, but I'm damn good at it. I've seen horrors that would shake anyone to the core, things no one should ever see. But there was one case that still haunts me, one that started just like any other. It all began with a routine search that led me to a hidden marketplace deep in the darkest parts of the web. It was selling human lives like products, young and old, with shiny photos and cold, heartless descriptions. I've seen these kinds of sites before, but this one was different. It felt more polished, more professional, and strangely quiet. It was like a digital fortress, almost challenging someone like me to try and break in. I remember diving into its code, trying to break past its many layers of protection. It was like peeling an onion, slow, painful, and frustrating. The site had a kind of twisted beauty to it, built by someone who clearly knew their stuff. But no system is perfect. After 3 long days, I finally broke through. Inside the database, I found loads of entries, each one listing a victim's name, age, photo, and chillingly exact details about their value. Every file felt like a silent scream, trapped in code. I started pulling out the data, trying to piece together links, names, and patterns. Like always, I kept careful notes, building a report I could hand over to the right people when the site was taken down. But then I found her, a girl from the Philippines. She couldn't have been more than 12. Her photo showed a child with big scared eyes and a forced smile. Her profile made me sick. But there was something strange about her entry. A small clue in the hidden data, a payment record. But it didn't lead to a buyer. It led back to her family. I searched her name across every system I could reach. I checked missing persons lists, news reports, and social media. The trail was weak, but it existed. She'd vanished months earlier, last seen in a small village. The local news barely mentioned it, and strangely, her parents never filed a report. Instead, their lives suddenly seemed to get a lot better. I found photos of them on Facebook, smiling in front of a brand new house. Their posts bragged about a miracle, a sudden blessing, expensive clothes, fancy parties, big happy grins. It didn't make sense. How could a poor family afford all that? Then it hit me. The pieces fell into place, creating a horrible picture I wish I never saw. They sold her, their own daughter, gave her away to monsters in exchange for a better life. I stared at the screen, feeling sick, like I was going to throw up. It wasn't just the disgusting marketplace, it was the betrayal, the cold, heartless way they turned their child into money. Usually I keep my work emotionless, distant, but not this time. I couldn't stop thinking about her. She wasn't just a file anymore. She was a real girl, thrown away like garbage by the people who should have protected her. I kept digging into the family's digital life, bank records, private chats, anything I could find. Every piece of information told a darker story. The money came in right when she went missing. Slowly, they started buying more and more fancy things. They weren't just part of it. They were enjoying her pain. The more I learned, the angrier I got. I always focused on breaking systems, not judging people. But this time felt different. Her photo wouldn't leave my mind. That smile, those terrified eyes. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't forget her. I spent weeks building a solid case, one that could be used by law enforcement. That's usually where my job ends. I gather proof, hand it over, and move on. But this time, I couldn't let it go. The idea that her parents were living happily while she suffered drove me crazy. They bought their joy by sacrificing her. It was too cruel. One night, while finishing up the last bit of work, I made a choice. I wasn't just going to send the data and walk away. I needed them to feel something, to remember her, to be haunted like I was. I created an email, completely anonymous and impossible to trace. I added pictures of their daughter from the site, blurred just enough to protect her, but still clearly her. I didn't write a single word, just the images. I wanted them to see what they did. To face it, I don't know if they ever opened that email, but in my mind I pictured them seeing it and feeling the shame eat away at them. It wasn't real justice, but it was something. That dark marketplace was gone within days, wiped off the web. My job there was done. The evidence I'd collected was enough to help track the people behind it, but her face still stays with me, a ghost I can't push away. I like to tell myself that maybe she's still alive somewhere. Maybe my work helped give her a chance. But deep down, I know how the dark web works. It doesn't let its victims go easily. Still, I keep doing this job, tearing down these monsters one by one. Because if I don't, then who will? Well, in early 2013, I was working at a big market research company in New York City. I had been there for 6 years and I was happy. My job was going well and my future looked bright. But one day, everything suddenly changed. It was a Wednesday morning. I woke up at 6:15, went through my normal routine, and walked down to the parking lot of my building. My car was parked there, one of about 12 to 14 in total. As I walked toward it, I noticed someone standing near the wall by the front of my car. It looked like a young man in his 20s, wearing a hoodie and a baseball cap. As I got closer, he just stood there and stared at me. I looked back at him, careful but not aggressive. When I got close to my car, I asked him if he needed something. I wasn't trying to start anything, but he was right next to my car and clearly watching me, so I thought I should find out what was going on before unlocking my door. I asked again, "Can I help you?" And without pausing, he said, "Can't nobody help you, homie?" I thought he was just trying to be funny or rude, so I didn't say anything else. I just got into my car and started backing out of the parking spot. The whole time, the guy kept staring and smiling at me like his weird comment was the funniest thing ever. On the way to work, I got cut off or flipped off a bunch of times, maybe 12 in just 30 minutes. By the time I sat through one of my boss's annoying meetings, I had pretty much forgotten about the hoodie guy and his strange words. The rest of my day was packed with tasks, so I didn't think about it again until later in the afternoon. I figured maybe he was trying to steal a car or break into one. I thought someone in my building was probably going to have a really bad day, but I didn't realize that even though my car was safe in the work parking lot, I was actually the one about to have that terrible day. When the workday ended, I drove back home. As I pulled into the parking lot, I looked around and didn't see any broken windows or signs of theft, so I thought everything was fine. But when I got upstairs to the floor where my apartment was, I turned the corner and saw something, or rather smelled something. Someone had pooped on my front door, and it wasn't normal poop either. It looked like runny diarrhea, and from the way it was splattered, it hit the door with some serious force. I just stood there shocked, hoping I was imagining things. But then the smell hit me, and I had to cover my mouth and nose to avoid throwing up. I went straight back down to my car, called an emergency cleaning service, and then contacted building management to get a copy of the security camera footage. All our doorways and hallways had cameras. That was one of the main reasons I had chosen to live there. Getting the footage was simple and quick. Once the cleaners arrived, and I tipped them well for coming on such short notice, I was finally able to go into my apartment around 9:30 p.m. I made some coffee, sat at my laptop, and started looking through the video footage management had uploaded to an online Dropbox for me. It took some time, but I eventually found the part of the footage from that afternoon. A person wearing a hoodie and baseball cap walked up to the building's main entrance. This guy looked similar to the one I saw in the morning, but this time he was wearing a fluorescent vest and carrying a package. I assumed he was a delivery guy. I thought he'd go to a unit, drop the package off, and leave, but instead he walked straight to my door, placed the package down, dropped his pants, and pooped all over my door. When he was done, he didn't even wipe. He just pulled up his pants and calmly walked out like nothing strange had happened. I couldn't believe what I had seen. It was so clear in the video. The weirdest part was, I didn't think this was the same guy from that morning. This one looked taller and had a bigger build. Even though I was sure the two were somehow connected, I had no idea why I was being targeted. I called the police, but they weren't helpful at all. One officer even asked if it could be a prank from a friend. I explained politely that I didn't have any friends who would poop on my door. They said they'd contact me if they had any updates, but laughed a bit as they ended the call. But it was me who called them again the next morning. I woke up at 6:15, did my usual routine, and went outside, only to find my car had been almost completely wrecked overnight. I called my boss and told him everything. He kindly gave me the day off so I could sort things out with the police and arrange for transportation. When I spoke with a different police department about the car, they were just as unhelpful. They said they'd look at the footage if I sent it, but since the people had their faces covered, I doubted they'd get anywhere. I barely had the motivation to email them the video files. By the evening, I started having serious thoughts. It was clear I was being targeted at my home, so staying in that apartment didn't feel safe anymore. After my car was towed away for repairs, I found a nearby 3-star hotel with some available rooms. I took a cab over and booked a stay. From the hotel, I called my dad to get his advice. He agreed. It was extremely worrying that these people knew where I lived. It was one thing to mess with my car, but for someone to know exactly which door was mine and poop on it, that was way more personal, and the situation was getting worse each day. Logically, the next step would be them trying to hurt me inside my apartment, and that's exactly what they ended up trying to do. I had no idea who they were, and honestly, I still don't. That made everything even scarier. How could a minor run-in with some guy lead to all this? Who were they? A gang? Brothers? Friends? Did I just happen to cross paths with someone totally insane? And worst of all, how far were they willing to take it? Well, it turned out they were ready to go as far as breaking into my home and destroying everything. Remember how I said I booked that hotel room? I figured I'd be there for at least a week, so I decided to go back to my place to grab a few personal things and comforts. After work, I took a cab back, walked upstairs, and saw my apartment door hanging off the hinges. One of my neighbors was standing there looking stunned. When I walked inside, I understood why. My apartment was completely destroyed. The glass in my shower was shattered. My bed frame was broken. The living room and kitchen were full of broken glass and dishes. They had thrown things everywhere. My artwork was ripped to pieces. My TV and laptop were smashed beyond repair. But the worst part, they had broken my fish tank and killed all my fish. I was crushed, completely heartbroken. Messing with me and my things was one thing, but harming innocent animals was something else. My poor fish didn't deserve that. It took everything in me not to break down crying right there in front of my neighbor. About an hour later, I was back in my hotel room facing two hard truths. First, I had to call the police for the third time in 3 days. Second, I couldn't live in that apartment anymore. But the thing that frustrated me the most through all of it was not knowing why. It made no sense anymore. If some drugged-out stranger had smashed my car and pooped on my door over a weird morning moment, maybe I could understand that. But now I was left wondering, if I had been home that night, Would they have tried to kill me? How had things gotten so extreme so fast? It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. And sadly, it wasn't even close to being over. Not yet. After I got the latest security camera footage from building management, who by now were clearly tired of all this mess, I saw something new. This time it wasn't a group of hooded punks like the ones who trashed my car. These guys were different. They were dressed in all black and wore face masks, hijacking and gloves. They looked like professionals, and honestly, that was the scariest part. That's when I made the decision that I was never sleeping there again. I began looking for a new place to live right away. But then, just a few days later, something even worse happened. Something that made me realize moving might not solve anything at all. I had started taking the metro in and out of Grand Central, which meant I had to walk a few blocks from the station to my office. I didn't mind. The walk gave me time to grab some food after work, and the metro felt more relaxed than the subway. It also gave me peace of mind knowing I wasn't heading straight home, where I might be watched or attacked again. For a little while, it felt like a good change. Then one day as I was turning from Park Avenue onto East 47th, I heard someone call my name. I was just walking along, eating my little halal street meat box with fries, when I heard someone shout my name like they were excited to see me. That friendly tone was the only reason I turned around. If they had sounded angry or serious, I would have kept walking and tried to disappear into the crowd. But they didn't. They sounded cheerful, almost happy. So I turned around, expecting to see an old coworker or friend. Instead, it was a complete stranger. This guy jogged up to me, and before I could say anything, he just punched me right in the face. I fell back, dropped my food, and he ran off yelling my name and saying things like, "You suck, dude, you suck." And this being New York, only about 3 out of maybe 20 people who saw it happen actually reacted. A few said, "Oh, damn, you okay?" and came over to check on me. I clearly wasn't okay. I had gone a few days without any more trouble, busy trying to fix my wrecked car, search for a new home, and process the mess I was in. But this attack proved it wasn't over. I thought once they knew where I lived, I was an easy target. But getting punched in the face in the middle of the street told me something much worse. They could find me anywhere. They were somehow able to track me even while I was just commuting to work. I didn't feel safe anymore, not even in my hotel room. The fear and stress hit a whole new level. It might sound silly to some, but honestly, I wanted to run home to my parents. I didn't know who else to turn to, but even that felt risky. What if I led these people to my parents' house? I couldn't do that. I couldn't even explain to my mom and dad how bad things had gotten because I knew they'd want to get involved. And that could put them in danger too. At least I had the police and my boss. Once my employer saw how serious the situation was, they were incredibly supportive and gave me paid time off until everything got sorted out. Between the cops, my boss, co-workers, my soon-to-be ex-landlord, and the agents helping me find a new place, my phone never stopped buzzing. I spent hours just replying to calls and texts, constantly seeing my screen light up with unknown or private numbers. Then one night, I was in a new hotel room when my phone started ringing again. The screen said, "Private number." I didn't think twice. I answered right away. A deep, calm voice greeted me. The guy spoke clearly and confidently, and he used my name right away. I thought he might be a cop or someone calling about one of the apartment applications I had submitted, but as the call went on, I started realizing that this guy wasn't either of those things. He knew a lot about me, way too much. He said my full name, mentioned the company I work for, and even knew the exact address of my old apartment, the one I was leaving because of all the chaos. I only gave short answers at first and then asked him why he was calling. That's when he introduced himself. He said his name was Odin. He made it clear that it wasn't his real name, just one he used. Odin said he worked for some tech company out west and had found my personal information online. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured he meant stuff from social media or from my company's website, like my email or phone number. But that wasn't what he was talking about. He said my name, my old address, pictures of me, and even my job history were all posted on a website called DocSpin. That name didn't mean anything to me at the time. I wasn't even sure I heard him right. But now, years later, even hearing that name gives me chills. For anyone who doesn't know, DocSpin was, or maybe still is, a website you can't access using regular browsers. It's on what people call the dark web, or sometimes the deep web. Odin explained it's actually more like the deep web. Basically, all you need is a special kind of browser, and you can see stuff that you'd never find on Chrome or Safari. Odin said I could download that browser and check it out myself, or he could just send me screenshots of what he found. I said it'd be quicker if he sent me the screenshots, so he did. And when I saw them, I was shocked. Someone had posted all my personal details online. But that wasn't the worst part. They also claimed that I had a criminal record for child-related crimes. The post said I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. It claimed I had been charged in Ohio and Illinois and had moved to New York to escape my past. That's when everything started to make sense. The guy in the parking lot, the poop on my door, the car vandalism, the punch on the street, all of it. It all came from that one crazy post online. At first, I thought the person who wrote it was completely anonymous, but it turns out they weren't. Not fully. Odin, being the tech expert he was, had done some digging and was more than happy to share what he found. I had no idea how the dark web really worked, but Odin explained that most posts on DocSpin came from anonymous users. Still, he decided to look into who could be behind the one targeting me. He searched my name. Nothing too useful came up. So he started checking the charges and found out that the whole story was fake. That DocSpin post was just a big lie. Then he went back and tried to figure out who might have a reason to do this to me. He searched for people who had recently left the company I worked for. That's when he found someone who seemed like he knew how to use dark web browsers and tools. Basically, someone with the skills to pull this off. He also discovered that this person had a blog on the regular internet. Odin checked out the writing and noticed it sounded just like the style used in the DocSpin post. He told me all this over the next couple of minutes, and I was getting more and more desperate to know who it was. I asked him to just give me a name, and when he did, everything made sense. I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to stoop to that level, but I knew him immediately. I had written a review about him when he worked at our company. That review was part of what got him fired. He had been lazy, always late, and barely did any work. But I guess behind his messy appearance, he was a smart guy, and really, really bitter. Once he found out I was the one who reviewed him, he must have decided to get revenge. I remember sitting on the edge of the hotel bed, holding the phone with one hand and rubbing my forehead with the other. My mind was spinning. It was too much to take in. I kept flipping between thinking the call was some prank and realizing that Odin might actually be real. But once he gave me the name of that fired employee, I knew he was telling the truth. He knew too much to be faking it. And other than keeping his identity hidden, Odin seemed genuinely interested in helping me. But then, toward the end of the call, that old feeling of paranoia came rushing back, because that's when Odin asked me for money. He claimed he could remove the post about me, but since it was a time-sensitive matter, where the longer it stayed up, the more danger I was in, he said he needed help breaking into the site. That meant asking a few of his friends for assistance, and those friends weren't going to do it for free. Basically, if I sent Odin a few $1,000s in Bitcoin, he could get the job done and make it disappear. Right away, warning bells started going off in my head. I straight up asked him if he had posted my information in the first place as a way to blackmail me into paying to take it down. He laughed a little awkwardly and admitted that would be a clever trick. But he also said that if all he wanted was money, there were easier and faster ways to scam me, ways that didn't involve calling and explaining everything in such detail. and that part made me believe him even more. I know it's possible he was playing some long, complicated game to fool me, but something about the way he handled it made it feel real. He didn't threaten me. He didn't try to pressure me. In fact, he even offered to remove the post before I paid him, just to prove he wasn't trying to extort me. He didn't have to explain what he could do if I didn't pay. I already had a pretty good idea based on everything that had happened. So I agreed, but not right away. I waited for 10 full days without any problems. Every day Odin would check in, not to demand money, but to follow up and see if anything strange had happened. He said that it was possible the guys who already knew where I lived might still cause trouble since they believed I was some kind of criminal. But now that the post was gone, hopefully, no one else would be showing up trying to teach me a lesson, as the post had put it. Still, I wasn't sure if I was being scammed. There was always that voice in my head saying I'd just been fooled. But as each day passed without any more incidents, that voice got quieter. And on the 10th day, I finally converted the money into Bitcoin and sent it to the wallet address Odin gave me. It was a complicated process, but I managed it. He called me after to say thanks, but in the end, I was the one thanking him over and over again. When the call ended, I found myself wanting to talk to him again. I called his number just a few minutes later to ask if I could ever use his help again in the future if I needed it. But all I got was that dull tone and a repeating beep beep. The number had been disconnected. A few more days passed, and the more I thought about everything, the more those old paranoid feelings started creeping back. I began to wonder if Odin had actually been the one behind everything, at least until I realized there might be a way to test if what he told me was true. I reached out to someone in our HR department and asked for a small favor. Then one afternoon, while still staying in that hotel, I took out a piece of paper with a number I'd written down and made a call. On the other end of the line was the guy I had written the work review about, the one who got fired. I put on my friendliest voice and began to talk. I told him who I was, mentioned that I'd heard he'd left the company, and said I was sorry to hear about it. He seemed surprised to hear from me, but he didn't sound angry or nervous, so I kept going. I said I had heard about a possible job opening somewhere else and asked if he wanted me to keep him updated if I heard anything. He said sure, a little confused, but still polite. I ended the call by saying it was nice talking to him again. The whole thing was a lie, but I wanted to hear how he reacted. I was looking for anything, some tone, some slip, that would prove he had a reason to hate me. But then, right as we were about to say goodbye, I added one final line. I said, "I know what you did." Now a normal, innocent person would have replied with something like, "Did what?" Or, "What are you talking about?" But he didn't say a single word. There was a pause like he was about to respond, but he didn't. He hung up, and honestly, that silence told me more than words ever could. If he was innocent, he would have defended himself, or at the very least asked what I meant. But he didn't. He just ended the call. That told me everything I needed to know. Odin hadn't lied to me, or if he had, then he had worked closely with the guy who did post it. Either way, it was a pretty smart scam, but the way the guy on the phone reacted, it was like he knew he was being recorded, and he was. I had set up my laptop camera to film the whole thing, just in case I got some kind of confession. I think he realized that. He knew if he stayed silent, he couldn't be caught or proven guilty. No matter what I thought or suspected, if he didn't say anything, he was safe. So in the end, I guess he got away with it. But I still got what I needed. More than revenge, I just wanted peace of mind. And now I had it. I saw the full story from beginning to end. What caused everything and how it led to that mess. It had been one crazy, terrifying journey, but now it finally made sense. I don't live in New York anymore. I don't even live on the East Coast, and I don't work in market research now either. But I'm happy. That's something at least. But now I'm very careful about what I post online. I don't share anything personal anymore. And to anyone reading this, please be careful too. Watch what kind of personal information you let out into the world, because there are people out there, messed up, dangerous people, who are just waiting for a chance to use it against you. I first got interested in the dark web during my second year of university. We were studying cybersecurity, and the topic came up during one of our seminars. It felt like this strange, almost secret part of the internet that barely anyone really understood. I started reading articles and watching videos. Some were a bit over the top, while others were very technical. But I was drawn in by the idea of this hidden world that existed just under the surface of the internet we use every day. I won't lie, I was curious about the darker side, but that wasn't what really grabbed me. I was more interested in how the dark web worked, how it was built, and what role it might play in the future of online life. Getting access was easier than I thought. I downloaded the Tor browser, which hides your activity by sending it through different servers, and I used a VPN for extra safety. The dark web wasn't like using Google. There's no big search engine. Instead, you need to use sites like the Hidden Wiki to find other websites with .onion endings. To learn how it all worked, I joined online forums where people who had been exploring the dark web for years shared their knowledge. When I felt ready, I started looking around. At first, what I found was honestly pretty harmless, or even kind of sweet, and at worst, only a little weird. I found guides about online privacy, like how to use encrypted messaging or secure email. Some of the people using the dark web were journalists or activists in countries with strict governments. That was something I hadn't really thought about before and found quite inspiring. There were also a lot of regular people who just cared deeply about their privacy. But of course, not everyone was there for good reasons. Some people had disturbing beliefs, like those who thought they were victims of something called gang stalking. Gang stalking is the belief that a group of people is constantly watching, following, and bothering you in public and private. They say they're being tracked, isolated, and messed with by strangers, sometimes even the government. While there have been a few real cases of organized harassment, most gang stalking claims have no proof and are often tied to mental health issues like paranoia or anxiety. On those forums, it was clear how far people had spiraled. Some had lost their jobs, friends, or families, but instead of accepting help, they turned to others with the same beliefs and kept feeding each other's fears. It was really sad to watch, and sometimes even dangerous. What began as a learning experience became something deeper. I started thinking more about online privacy, surveillance, and how technology affects freedom. The dark web didn't seem purely good or evil. It was just a tool. What mattered most was how people used it. But as I spent more time exploring, I started coming across darker parts. It didn't happen all at once. It felt like peeling back layers of something you're not sure you want to see. I found mentions of websites where illegal stuff was sold, forums where people talked about crimes and disturbing topics. I wasn't looking for this. It just popped up alongside the more normal content. But what really stuck in my head were the mentions of something called red rooms. These were rumored to be live videos where horrible things happened on camera, with people paying in crypto to watch. Some said they were just urban legends made up to scare people. Others claimed they were real but hidden very well, only available through secret links and big payments. I hadn't seen anything myself that confirmed they were real, but the idea alone gave me chills. What really shocked me was how casually people talked about them. On certain forums, people treated horrifying topics like they were just weird facts or hobbies. It was like being in a place where normal rules didn't exist anymore, and being anonymous made anything possible, even the worst things. Despite everything, I kept reminding myself why I started all this: to understand, not to take part. I was always careful not to click anything suspicious or go too far into places I didn't belong. Still, it was hard to ignore the heavy feeling of what the dark web could hide. For every forum helping people with privacy, there was something else in the shadows, something awful. The rumors of red rooms stayed in my mind as I kept exploring. People still whispered about them in chat rooms and threads, but nothing was ever solid proof. At first, I brushed it off as internet myths, but the more I read, the more I started thinking maybe they weren't all fake. It felt like a mystery I wasn't sure I wanted to solve, but I couldn't stop myself. I wanted to know the truth. I started by reading forums where people claimed they knew something. The posts were always vague, full of hints and strange codes. Some said red rooms were real and that people could request what happened in the videos. Others said that wasn't possible, since streaming anonymously was hard to do, but there were enough convincing posts to keep me going. I moved carefully through chat rooms and directories, each one feeling darker than the last. Some sites had creepy names and basic designs, just black and white with strange links. Some needed passwords or cryptocurrency to get in, and I hesitated every time. I didn't want to go too far, but I was desperate to know if they were real. The creepiest moments were when I found threads where people claimed they had watched one. They talked about private invites, huge crypto payments, and live streams from unknown servers. It was all so strange, but they described it in ways that felt believable. I never found clear proof, no real links or actual videos, but the search itself felt dangerous. It wasn't just about what I might see, it was about reaching a point I couldn't return from. Whether or not red rooms were real started to matter less. What scared me was knowing people could even imagine something so twisted. I logged off, feeling disturbed but also relieved that I hadn't seen anything. The rumors were still rumors, but the journey had shown me just how real the darkness could be. And in a strange way, that was what pulled me back in. I remember the moment I found it. I had been searching for weeks, reading sketchy threads, clicking on broken links, trying to piece together the mystery. Then it happened. A new post appeared on a shady part of a forum. It claimed to offer access to a real red room. It was short, just a few lines, an encrypted link, and a request for payment in Bitcoin. I froze. Everything in me said to stop, shut the browser, and walk away. But I didn't. I couldn't. The same curiosity that got me into this wouldn't let me leave. I sent the Bitcoin, an amount that made me feel sick just clicking the button, and followed the steps. The link opened a blank page with a countdown clock. I felt like I was in a horror movie. My heart started to race as I waited. When the timer hit 0, the screen flickered. A low-quality video began. The room was cold and plain, lit by harsh white lights. A man in a lab coat stood in the middle, surrounded by strange tools and machines. The camera moved slowly, showing a person tied down to a table. They were awake, terrified, gagged. Their muffled screams came through the speakers. A live chat box beside the video exploded with messages. People were cheering, making requests, treating it like a show. It was sickening. They acted like the person on the table wasn't even human. Maybe they thought it was fake, but to me, it looked real. Too real. The man in the coat began doing things, using needles, electricity, and other devices to cause pain. The victim twisted and screamed. The chat crowd loved it. They asked for worse and worse things. It was pure cruelty, all disguised as science. I don't know how long I watched before I finally closed the browser and slammed my laptop shut. I just sat there in silence, my hands shaking. I felt horrible, ashamed, and full of guilt for going that far. What I saw was worse than any scary story or rumor. It was real. Somewhere out there, this was happening. That night I deleted everything. Tor, my Bitcoin wallet, all my search notes. I didn't want a single thing linking me to what I had seen. But those images stayed in my head. They always will. They're not going away, and I guess that's something I'll have to live with.